You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Spent the week down in Texas. Just got back home, so got to enjoy a little bit of time with the family. But on to football, right? We got a big slate in front of us. Some juicy lines, kind of some weird lines this week, obviously with quarterback situations up in the air. But I'm ready to get after it, man. Let's go.
Yeah, this one was definitely an interesting one. Looking through some of these lines, and to your point, I don't know. It's usually very rare that you look up a game to start seeing props coming in, things like that for certain games, all that kind of stuff. And there's none. Like I can't think back to a time where I've looked at a game, looked for props on the game, and can't find a single one that is out there for from the folks out there in Vegas. But it happened not only once but twice this week with some uncertainty at the quarterback in a couple of games, things like that. Like, it looks like they've just kind of pulled all of the props on that, which, like I said, very strange. I had never really seen that one before. All of that kind of good stuff. But it is what it is. So we'll be a little light on some of our props this week. But never fear, we've got plenty of props for all the rest of them. And we're going to be hitting the over, the unders, all that good stuff as well. Again, one of the best things to do, head over to the YouTube channel, click the subscribe button. Best way to support this independent podcast. You can do that, searching the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast, or you can just go to youtube.com/ at Good Old Boys FF, and that at Good Old Boys FF. You can also reach us on any of the other socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of that good stuff. But yeah, let's go ahead and start kind of rocking and rolling. And before we forget, we did have a question come in on the Twitter earlier today, and I'm going to pull that up here, and we're going to answer this question before we get really rocking and rolling. But it's a start sit. Would you start Daniel Jones versus Houston or Jimmy G versus the Chargers this weekend? Have Ayuk starting if it helps. So if he goes Jimmy G, he's got a stack. If not, it is what it is at the quarterback there. Are you looking to go with Jimmy G? Or are you looking to go Daniel Jones at a straight up start?
Here, this one's a little tough, right? Because both quarterbacks are going up against bottom three teams in rushing yards allowed, right? Mm-hmm. The Houston Texans are worst in the league, 32nd out of 32 teams in rushing yards allowed, and I believe the Chargers are sitting at 29 or 30, one or the other. So unfortunately, I don't see big games for either quarterback.
But Kevin, you said something there that makes sense for me to start one of those guys for that reason. One of them's mobile, one of them's not.
Jones moves a bit more, right? They both have prolific running backs around them to give the ball to. And I guess you're leaning Jones because he runs a bit, and I agree with that. I'm actually going to lean Jimmy G because I at least like his weapons more. I like Debo and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle more than I like Saquon Barkley, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, and whoever else the Giants are trotting out there. So right. I'm going Jimmy G by a hair. You have that double Monday night stack, so you're going to be, you're going to be crossing your fingers watching this game, or Sunday night stack, Sunday night. So, you're going to be watching it, and you got a lot to root for. But both teams are at home. I like the primetime matchup, though. Like, it's so close. I'd rather have something to root for during prime time because otherwise I'm not going to care about the game.
Well, that's fair. That is fair. When I was looking through some of the props, right, and this is one of the things that kind of stuck out. Jimmy G doesn't have a rushing prop line out there, but he's got about 240 is his passing kind of over under on that. Daniel Jones passing line was about 180, 185, if memory serves right, but he had about a 32, 33 prop as far as rushing yards go. So yeah, it's one of those that Jimmy G probably gets you probably get you more points when it's all said and done. He certainly has the higher ceiling, I think, of the two of them, short of Daniel Jones breaking a long run. But Daniel Jones, is he going to surprise us if he only throws for 150, 160 yards? No. So, you know what, kind of talking through it a little bit more, I think you might be right that Jones might be the play.
Who do you trust more to get you 2 touchdowns? That's really what you're going to get, right? Like, you need 2 touchdowns. And I don't see either quarterback running them in with the running back weapons that they have. So with that said, I'm hoping for a shootout, or I'm hoping for Debo or Ayuk to kind of break one and get maybe some bonus yards attached to it, something like that. Like, it's Jimmy G. It's pretty stinking close, but I do think that's the right call for this week.
Okay. Yeah, I can get down on that one. I can certainly see that. I think you're right. I think you do see the chances for the game, getting up there in total points scored. I think that's higher in the San Francisco and the Chargers side of things there. Just with the overall play and the weapons involved on both sides of both teams there. So yeah, let's, I'll co-sign on that. Let's go Jimmy G. We do have some comments coming in here. Let's check these things out here real quick. We got the Stacks app in the chat saying ready to rock and roll for week 10. Absolutely. So are we. Leadership lessons saying that they're ready for the calls from the boys, and never fear, we've got you covered on that. Spear IT, welcome back into the chat. Say, let's get this thing started. Absolutely. And Jaden, riding that Donta Foreman last night, who put up a good game. Absolutely. It is Foreman season.
It was a little scary through the first half.
You're not kidding. But he pulled it out, and
he did.
31 rush attempts. Nothing to sneeze at there. And he is certainly getting it done by volume. And for everybody out there that was very concerned about Chuba Hubbard, taking stuff away from him, Chuba Hubbard was healthy last night, and that really, if 31 carries, that's workload that we typically see, Derrick Henry not even get to most weeks. So, yeah,
I think the weather helped, right? A little bit of the Hurricane Nicole kind of driving some wind and rain through there. So that definitely helped the game script, but even more so, obviously they found the guy that they're willing to lean on, right? They traded away McCaffrey because, do what's right by the player and the organization. They got some, capital in return there, and they have a running back who, quite frankly, is doing a better job running the ball than the Panthers as a team were doing with McCaffrey right there. So it seems to work for both sides. The Niners haven't looked back. They're glad they have McCaffrey. I think the Panthers are glad that they were able to find a trading partner. But they have found success, and they almost need to be careful, right? Because they are playing themselves further and further away from one of these top rookie quarterback prospects that are going to be coming out this season. So while it's working for them, you got to be careful. Otherwise, you're not going to have the excitement around draft day that you wish you had.
Right. It's funny to think about too, right? If the Buccaneers lose this weekend, which is very possible, they could do that. If the Buccaneers lose on that early game on Sunday morning over in Germany, the Panthers are a game back from being, in that division. Like that's it. And this is reminding me so much of the NFC East a few years ago, where it just seemed like who wanted to go be a playoff team, who could not lose the most games is really what it came down to in that division. And that's kind of what this NFC South is really shaping up to be, which is really kind of sad because we all thought that Tampa Bay would be doing what Tampa Bay has done the last few seasons. They'd be a 10, 12 win team, somewhere in that kind of range. You'd have, the Saints probably knocking on the door, a 9-win type of team. Atlanta was supposed to be really bad. Carolina was going to not be great. And turns out the whole division just not that great. So
yeah, it hasn't been very exciting, right?
Not at all. A couple of questions coming in here. Sotober 24. Welcome back to the chat, Sotober. He is asking Herbert or Jimmy G in that Sunday night matchup. I'm going to go with Herbert.
I'm going Herbert too. You got to take the guy who you know is going to drop back and throw it 35 times a game.
Right. Terry back in the chat. Welcome back in, Terry. What's up, fellas? Should I drop Cam Akers for James Cook for my final roster spot? Man, there's probably got to be something more exciting out there than James Cook for your
Yeah,
spot.
I don't think either one are worth a roster spot at the moment.
No.
So if I
think honestly, I'd rather drop Cam Akers for Kyron Williams. And that's being a little bit cheeky there, but I also at the same time would, hey, let's take this deal on the upside that we heard lots of praise coming out of camp from McVay and crew on that one. But
yeah, Terry, do you have any other options? I think you're trading the same guys, right? Like each one are going to see 5 or 6 touches a game. You know, maybe Akers works his way back into some good graces, maybe not. James Cook has not really panned out, right? They brought in Nyheim Hines. That is a veteran version of James Cook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cook is a little bit more explosive since he's younger, but Nyheim Hines is a better pass blocker at this moment. The Cook probably receives out of the backfield equally to Nyheim Hines. I just don't see a whole bunch that separates the two of them. So
I think Nyheim Hines might be a little bit better on a straightforward between the tackles than James Cook, but it's a slight edge that I would give him.
Yeah. So I don't know that either one excites me. Like there's just got to be something out there better that we can help fill up your roster depth with besides 2 third-string running backs.
Yes. Terry also asking Brady versus Seattle or Jimmy G versus the Chargers or Goff against Chicago. I think I got to lean Brady.
I'm leaning Brady this week. Seattle's pass defense hasn't been wonderful. What I'm hoping is, right, and we'll see how this plays out. I'm hoping this game-winning drive against the Rams last week kind of snapped something for Brady, right? Like they were trying to run the ball. They were trying to be more balanced. It wasn't really working. Leonard Fournette's on the sideline pouting. Then he gets his way and goes back in, and he's 2.5 yards in a cloud of dust. Like it just wasn't working for them. You're hearing reports coming out of Tampa Bay that Rachaad White's going to start seeing more and more touches, and it's going to be eaten into Fournette's workload. So Fournette owners, maybe this is a good time to sell with that news if you haven't already, seeing what you can get for the flip there. But yeah, I think I like Brady. I think they're going to have to throw it a bit more. Seattle's front seven's pretty stout. They're not giving up nearly as much on the ground as they do in the back end through the air.
Right. All right. And Spear IT asking, should they start Aaron Jones if he plays?
Yes. The Cowboys' run defense is the chink in the armor, and he is clearly the guy that Aaron Rodgers is most comfortable with, both passing and being able to trust to hand the ball off to. So I think you do. I think you play Aaron Jones and expect a flex type output, right? Like he's not going to be that fringe running back one that you kind of drafted him to be. You need to tamper expectations a little bit, but he's probably going to be the best flex option you have on your roster.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Spirit IT also asking Arizona's defense or Buffalo defense.
I'm going Arizona's defense especially if Stafford's out.
Correct.
Right? This Buffalo defense has been good, but we've seen some chinks in the armor a little bit running the ball. They didn't give a ton up to the Jets, but the offense didn't do enough to get it moving. If Case Keenum's going, it's going to allow Minnesota to feel comfortable taking a couple more downfield chances. I think Jefferson could have a pretty big game, here, as long as the Minnesota offensive line holds up. Arizona D, if Stafford's not going, this offense isn't going to do squat. They can't pass protect. They can't run block. Cooper Kupp is only going to be able to see so much volume. Like it really, really hurts the Rams if Stafford doesn't go. So Arizona, I'm going to say Arizona D by a hair, but it's a smash Arizona if Matt Stafford officially doesn't go.
Cosign, 100%. Bill over on YouTube, good to see you back in the chat. Bill asking Antonio Gibson or Ayuk full PPR.
I'm going Ayuk. I just Philly's defense has done a good job shutting teams down, right? They let him back in late a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be a Gibson day, right? I think you're going to see. I'm guessing Terry McLaurin. Maybe you actually get to see a Logan Thomas sighting in the second half, because I do expect them to be playing catch up quite a bit. So Gibson, while he might see 3 or 4 rushes and 3 or 4 targets, I think Ayuk's ability to end up in the end zone and get some of those chunk plays for the 49ers, I think I'd hedge my bets and take Ayuk on that point. I think he has basically the same ceiling with a higher floor.
Yeah, I kind of lean that way as well. Antonio Gibson really seemingly had to have a hard time really kind of seeing those double digits opportunities there. That backfield's a bit muddled, and the matchup is, I think, just better for Ayuk. So I'm going to lean Ayuk as well. Terry asking Dillon or Aaron Jones. If Aaron Jones healthy, I'd rather play Aaron Jones over A.J. Dillon.
Cosign.
So Tober, Curtis Samuel worth a roster spot? If so, would you flex Samuel or Jamal Williams? I'd probably still flex Jamal Williams, and Curtis Samuel is worth a roster spot depending upon what else is out there. That's really it. It really depends on what's on your waiver wire. I wouldn't have a problem dropping Curtis Samuel if I was upgrading at either wide receiver or at running back, or if I was taking a stash play type of thing and stashing somebody away for some potential upside and upshot there.
Yeah, cosign. Jamal Williams has been seeing 50+% of the touches. He's the ball carrier there.
Gets the goal line work.
The goal line work. The Bears, especially for this week, the Bears defense has kind of been gashed because they don't have Robert Quinn or Roquan Smith anymore. Yeah. So they're going to be susceptible to the run. Both of these are divisional games, but I think Detroit and Chicago is going to just relatively stay a closer game, which allows Detroit to run the ball more. Curtis Samuel, he just has fallen off since week 5, and that really just bothers me. Jahan Dotson's back into the fold now, and we'll see kind of what that does. But I'm going to lean Jamal Williams and take the guy who's been kind of a proven commodity there as far as a RB2 or flex play this season. Right.
And when you look back at it, like you said, at week 5, that's really kind of where it started falling off, because week 6, he only saw 5 targets. Week 7, he, a bit of an outlier again. He saw 8 targets, then 4 and 4. So I don't know that I necessarily want to, put him on my roster to go out there and see him get, 4 to 7 targets a game there. And with Heineke under center, it is very apparent that he and Terry McLaurin have something going, and they're, he's willing to push the ball to the number 1 wide receiver on that roster. And Kevin hit the ball perfectly. What he said, Jamal Williams is in a timeshare, and he gets the more valuable work down along the goal line. And the Lions seem very willing to just kind of ease DAndre Swift back into this thing. So yeah, I would go with Jamal Williams at the flex between those two. Absolutely. Bill was saying right on. Thanks for that answer earlier. Terry, back to the question. Chase Edmonds is the only other RB on waivers besides James Cook.
So yeah. Honestly, with Chase Edmonds, Melvin Gordon is one fumble away from just being run out of Denver. Like, there is a reason that the Broncos got him back in the package with Bradley Chubb, is they felt like they needed depth at running back, and it wasn't because of what they're getting out of Latavius Murray. It's because they don't know exactly what they're getting with Melvin Gordon. So
right.
Well,
And Mike Boone also had hit the IR recently,
Yeah.
right around that same time too.
None of the three are sexy, but I think it might be Chase Edmonds by a hair. Like, and I get it. It's all ugly. It all kind of makes you vomit in your mouth a little bit. But Edmonds has shown that he can be a decent running back in this league. He did it last year. So it's just kind of one of those situations. He was okay for Arizona last year. It didn't work out with Miami's offense, but maybe it can work out with Denver's a little bit if he's just willing to hit the ball between the tackles hard. And as long as he doesn't put on the ground, he'll find more and more playing time. And I think Hackett is kind of over the Melvin Gordon experience right now.
Yes. Jaden, would Dotson be a good ad if Tony doesn't do anything? I mean, if Kadarius Toney doesn't do anything out there, right? Like it'll be interesting to see what happens. And really, I'm willing to wait until after week 11 before I make my decision on what Kadarius Toney is going to look like in this Kansas City offense. This last week, I'm willing to take that as a throwaway, and I'm really looking at this week and next week to see if I've got the time that I can kind of fiddle around with my roster spots, things like that, and see what that really looks like going towards the playoffs. But Jahan Dotson has shown that he did well. Now, granted, that was with Carson Wentz under center and not Taylor Heineke. So it'll be interesting to see how that connection and how that duo looks once they come back together. But yeah, I would probably lean on Tony a little bit longer than necessarily move on quick from him.
Yeah, I'd co-sign that. Tony caught both of his targets. So first week playing with the team, caught both of his targets. It was only like 12 yards, but the fact that he caught both of them, I think that speaks to at least a situation that you want to see what happens, right? The thing with Kansas City is there is not, Juju has done a pretty good job cementing his presence as the number 2 option behind Travis Kelce. And they don't really have a solidified number 3. Hardman has been hurt this week, right? He hasn't been practicing. Valdez-Scantling pops up once every 3 weeks. Like if Kadarius Toney can show he's able to get open and meshes with Patrick Mahomes, he clearly has a number 3 target right there with Toney. Like he will jump Hardman and Valdez-Scantling, and he'll at least see 5 or 6 targets a game. So Jahan Dotson, I just don't know if Heineke's going to be consistent enough to be able to feed Dotson and F1 and Curtis Samuel. He hasn't been able to do it yet. You have Logan Thomas back in the mix. And while a lot of these guys are just kind of guys, you're still trying to feed the ball into them. And I just don't know that Heineke's equipped enough to do that.
Yes, I would very much agree.
Here's the deal. Dotson is the guy that I want if the Commanders make the move to Sam Howell. Like that is when I'm going after Jahan Dotson, figuring that those guys have spent the most time working together. But with Heineke, it just doesn't do anything for me. I'd rather take the upside of Kadarius Toney and a Kansas City offense than Jahan Dotson. But if the Commanders make another change at quarterback and Sam Howell gets some run, Dotson's actually a guy that I would be looking after as kind of a late home run play, because I think those two have been working together enough behind the scenes that there's a natural rapport being built there that he might actually see a big jump in target share for the Commanders if that comes to pass.
Okay. Terry saying pick 2, full PPR, Amari Cooper versus Miami, Evans versus Seattle, Kirk against KC, Sutton versus Tennessee, or Khalil Herbert versus Detroit.
I'm going Amari Cooper and Mike Evans. Like play your studs. So Seattle secondary, not that great. I expect at least this Cleveland-Miami game to be a pretty high-scoring affair. Vegas does as well. So I think Cleveland's going to have to throw the ball to keep in it. And Amari Cooper is clearly the number 1 target there for Cleveland. So those guys are my workhorses. That's who I'm running with.
Cosign. Absolutely. Alrighty, guys, we're going to start hitting some of the games, some of the matchups here. But again, as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, let's throw those out there in the chat. Let's make sure that we're answering those questions, get you guys squared away here going into week 10. But we're going to go ahead and jump into the first matchup here. We've got Seattle, the Buccaneers, taking place in that early game out there in Germany. The Bucs are favored by 2.5, over under on this one, 44.5. What are your thoughts on this game?
I like Seattle. If they're not going to win it outright, I mean, we're only talking a 1-point game here. So I like Seattle to cover the -2.5 or the +2.5 on the Seattle side, I guess. But I also like the under. Big travel over to Germany. First time that the NFL has been there. It's a new stadium. The turf is going to be a bit different. Yes, they've been practicing on it, but we all know games are completely different than that. So it should be a competitive affair, but I'm thinking this game's something like 21-20. Like I see it that close, and I could see it going either side. Either way, Seattle comes away on the spread there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do like the Seattle call. I do like the under call as well. I think that this is going to be an extremely close matchup. Yeah, and part of it too, part of the reason that I also think that Seattle's going to be able to at least cover, if not win outright, is the fact they're 6-3 against the spread this season. The Buccaneers are 2-6-1. Like they have not, they've done a poor job covering even light spreads. Winning games that they probably should have. All of that kind of stuff. As far as one of the props in this game goes that I really like is DK Metcalf over 4.5 receptions on this one. DK's been looking pretty good throughout the season and definitely putting up enough to the point where he's very consistently 4, 5, 6 catches a game, kind of averages right around that 5 receptions a game mark. And so I'm going to take that one. Feels like I'm cheating. It feels so easy. But Kevin, what's your prop?
My prop for this game, I'm taking Rachaad White over 28.5 rushing yards. Said just a couple minutes ago how they're going to be working him into the offense a bit more. He is more explosive. He brings something just a little bit different to this Tampa Bay team that they don't get with Leonard Fournette. And I think he's going to be able to grind out some of these yardages or some of this yardage to get him most of the way. And I think he'll spring one, 10, 12 yards and get a chunk play to take him over.
I like it. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and head into our next matchup here. Again, guys, if you have any questions, anything like that, throw them in the chat. Let's get those answered for you. But we've got the Vikings and the Bills. Bills favored by 3.5 in this one. Over under 43.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Vikings because I do not expect Josh Allen to go. Now, if Josh Allen does go, I think this does flip. I think I take Buffalo at that time. But all things are trending towards Allen not going. So I'm going to take the Vikings here. I'm also going to take the under. Without Josh Allen, I think this Buffalo offense is going to be a little bit more stagnant than what we've been accustomed to. And Minnesota's offense, while it's been serviceable, has not been lighting the world on fire here in recent weeks like they should be able to. So all things considered, we're looking at like a 23-20 game. Under, but just barely.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that this one's going to see, because even if Buffalo misses Josh Allen this week, that defense is good enough to hold their own against just about any offense out there in the league. And so I do think that we're going to see the under on this one. The Bills playing at home. Typically when you see it at home and two teams are evenly matched up, it's usually about a field goal type of game there. But I do think that you see the Vikings sneak in and see this as a field goal game. So I'm going to take the team that's getting points in that case. And if Josh Allen misses, there's good likelihood that we could see the Vikings win this thing outright. So I'm taking the Vikings. I'm taking the under. This was one of the games that I mentioned earlier that didn't have any props in it, so I don't have a prop on this one. And I'll punt that one down the road and maybe pick up some more units on another bet that I feel a little bit stronger on here.
Yeah, there wasn't any yardage props associated with it, but I am going to take a TJ Hawkinson anytime touchdown. It was plus 240. I like the odds on it. Good return there for an anytime touchdown prop. And with what he saw last week in volume, I think that can carry over here, especially if that pass rush starts to get to Kirk Cousins a little bit. We saw it how how the Eagles were able to get to him back in week 2. That's when Irv Smith kind of had all of his big chances, right? Was in that game. I think we see the same type of thing here. If the pass rush starts getting home, Cousins is going to look for Hawkinson early and often, and I think he's going to be able to sneak into the end zone here.
I like it. Heading right over into the next matchup. We've got the Lions taking on the Bears. Bears favored by 3 in this one, over under 48.5. What are your thoughts here?
Big total here for this game, right? It opened at 45.5, which would have been, I think, a lot closer to decide here. I like the under in this game. I think the Bears passing defense is just good enough, right, to kind of keep things down and interesting. The Bears rushing offense, a lot of clock gets sucked up with the Bears leading the NFL in rushing yards. So chains are moving a lot of long kind of methodical drives. And it's going to be putting the Lions, behind the 8 ball here a little bit. So they're going to keep trying to drive it down the field. But overall, I'm going to take the Bears to cover the 3-point favorites that they are here, but I'm going to take the under. I don't think this game gets to 48.5.
I think you're right. I think this one is going to be Detroit has been bad on defense, like really, really bad. And it depends on what offense they've got here, as they've kind of been going a little bit of roller coaster riding as far as putting up points on the board. So I'm going to take Chicago. I do think that they cover. It's not going to surprise me if this one ends up as a push when it's all said and done. But I do think you're right. I do think that we see the under on this one, something in the neighborhood of 25-22, 24-21 type of thing in this one here. And I do like Darnell Mooney for one of his props that he had out there, over 42.5 receiving yards.
I like that. They've been looking his way a bit more. The more Fields runs, the more that the safeties kind of creep down, and allows Mooney to get open, and Chase Claypool being more involved in the offense this week, I think will help that. So I like that a lot. I'm taking Jared Goff over 225.5 passing yards. I think a lot of this is going to come in the fourth quarter, garbage time. It wouldn't surprise me if he's going into the fourth quarter with 160 passing yards, right? And then in the fourth quarter, he kind of airs it out and gets another 100 yards or so in the fourth quarter as the Lions are trying to play catch up. So just a little sweet for my, or I guess it was a little undervalued. That's what I'm looking for my taste. So I decided to take it. Goff over.
I like it. Question coming in. Fields rest of season ? What do you think of Fields rest of season for fantasy?
He's the way he's using his legs, he's a top 10 quarterback the rest of the season. It just, unless for some reason he takes a giant step backwards, but it looks like Eberflus and this Bears offense is finding keys to success, right? It's getting Fields out into space, using the bootleg, using some designed runs to keep the safeties honest, obviously the RPO aspect of the offense. And then if he can hit 1 or 2 big, deep shots a game, right? That's all it takes. 1 or 2 deep shots a game just to keep the safeties honest. It only helps this running game even more. So I like Fields rest of season. I think he's definitely top 12, but I'll hedge my bet a little bit and go top 10.
I like it. Leadership lessons asking, is there a Swift sighting coming?
No.
Alrighty.
I think Swift is, I think you're looking at 50%. I think this is a true 50-50 backfield at this point. Now, Swift was completely taken off the injury report. His name was nowhere to be seen. So his ankle should be getting better. So in games where they're losing, maybe you see him involved a bit more, and they should be losing. So maybe you will see a Swift sighting, but it's going to be hard for consistency because Jamal Williams is going to be there between the tackles guy. He has proven that there is no sense in the Lions moving away from that now. So you now need Swift to have 5 receptions for 70 yards a game to be relevant, because on the rushing side of things, he's going to see 8 carries for 24 yards.
Well, I mean, on the flip side of that, Swift has been very, very efficient when we've seen him, especially efficient, healthy, to the point where, earlier in the season before he got dinged up, he was getting 7-8 yards a carry on that. So, if he stays hyper efficient, we could certainly see him get things done on, for fantasy without a ton of volume there. But again, that's going to come off of him having to break a massive run or get a play out, get a passing play out in space where he makes a guy miss and he can get down the field and pick up, big chunk plays type of thing there. Or if he breaks off a long run or a long pass and gets in the end zone on those. That's the formula that you're going to see a Swift sighting coming. And that is probably harder to predict and project than it is to predict touchdowns out there. And as we all know, for fantasy, predicting touchdowns is probably the hardest thing out there for that one. So I'm hoping that it's coming. My home league team would certainly like to see a Swift sighting, but I don't know that we're going to necessarily see it this week. Hopefully we'll see him get mixed back in here for the end of season. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head over into some monkey knife fight and the touchdown dance here. Again, guys, if you have any questions, throw them out there. Let's go ahead and chat about them. Here we go. This one, we're going to play Rapid Fire. And for those of you that don't know, Rapid Fire is a fun little game that we play over at monkeyknifefight.com. If you use the promo code GOBFF, you can get a 100% deposit match up to $100 for new depositors over there on monkeyknifefight.com. Again, promo code GOBFF. And what we do here is we're going to pick which one of these will be the winner out of this matchup. You get 2 for 2 right. You get a 2.5 times prize on that one. So you got Patrick Mahomes versus Tua Tagovailoa for passing yards. Tua gets a 35.5 yards bonus on this one. Which way are you leaning?
It's a big bonus.
Yes.
Big bonus. I'm still going Mahomes. Mahomes has been touching 300 yards each and every game. Going up against Jacksonville, I don't see a reason that this is going to change, especially with the Chiefs being at home. So I like Mahomes here.
I think I'm going to go the other way. I think I'm going to take Tua on this one.
They're playing in a hurricane. You know that, right?
Well, you're going to spoil my fun.
Well, I'm just being.
I know you are.
And it's not supposed to be. It's just supposed to be a little windy. Like most of the big part of it is hitting down there today and yesterday. So, a lot of it's going to be past, but there's still going to be residual fallout, and whether it's the field is soggy or whatever. But that does play into my mind as well.
Fair enough. And Cleveland has been all right. They've actually been pretty decent against, holding opposing quarterbacks down when it comes to overall passing yards and overall fantasy points there. Whereas the Jags, a little bit more lenient on that one. Man, oh man, I'm still going to go Tua. I'm gonna take the Tua. I'm going to ride the bonus on that one. Not going to surprise me if we see both of these guys actually touch 300 yards when it's all said and done. And if I'm getting that much of a bonus, I'll take the bonus. All right, let's go ahead and move on to rushing yards here. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. Barkley gets a 17.5 yards bonus for rushing. Who you got here?
I'm going Saquon. I'm going to take the bonus here. I think the Broncos know that the Titans' passing offense does not pose a threat, right? And so the key here is, as we have seen, is if you can hold Derrick Henry down and keep him from having that monster run and do kind of what he did last week, right? Is basically put that game on his shoulders. And yes, it was a loss against Kansas City, but they just didn't do a good job stopping the run. The Broncos have had similar issues. We've seen some big running back performances against the Broncos. ETN had a great game. Josh Jacobs had a great game. Bell. Why am I not thinking about this? The Jets, Michael Carter and
Was it Breece
Hall? Not Hall. Not Bell. Hall. Sorry. Breece Hall and Carter both combined had a pretty good game against the Broncos. So it's on them. Like, they have to be able to just play man coverage and stack the box. Like, that's what the Broncos have to do to remain competitive, because Tennessee's not going to drop back and throw the ball enough to let that pass rush get home.
Fair enough. I'm going to take Derrick Henry on that one. When I was looking up some of the props on that one, they had the over-under set at like 107.5 for Derrick Henry, and Saquon was like 80. So I'm going to take the guy that Vegas thinks is going to, be over 100 yards versus the guy that they think is going to be about 80 yards. So I'll take the Tua and the Derrick Henry. It sounds like you're going with Mahomes and Saquon there. Again, guys, you can play along with us over there on monkeyknifefight.com. You see the promo code right there, GOBFF. Again, 100% deposit match up to $100 for first-time depositors over there. All righty. And if you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that, let's throw them in the chat. Let's get you guys some answers. But we're going to go ahead and head into our next matchup here. We got the Broncos. We got the Titans. Titans favored by 3 over under 38 in this one. What are your thoughts here?
I like the Broncos. I like the under on the 38. This game today had a lot of action on this game. This game's actually moved all the way up to 41, which I like even more. So if you can go jump in on this game now and get the 41, I like the under even more. So over the last 8 weeks, these teams combined have played 16 games, essentially, right? In these last 8 weeks, 13 of their 16 combined games have been the under. 4 consecutive for the Broncos, 5 consecutive for the Titans. This game just spells under. It's going to be another drawn out, 20 to 14, 20 to 17. I guess it can't be, 2017 type game. But I feel good at 38 for the under.
Yeah, this one has a 14 to 17 feel to me on this one as well. I'm going to take the under. Although this one could be a little interesting simply from the standpoint, Tennessee had a whole bunch of players that they've already ruled out. The Broncos are struggling offensively. We don't know. It doesn't look like we know yet whether it's going to be a Ryan Tannehill or a Malik Willis under center for the Titans there. And Russ has been doing Russ things. So I'm going to take the Titans on this one. I do think that they find a way to cover. This one really feels like a push when it's, if I'm being honest here. Like, this one feels like this will be a field goal game and we'll end up pushing on this one. But I'll take the Titans because I do think that I think they're good for the 3 or more on that one. I'm right there with you on the under. I think this one is going to be what they call a defensive matchup, and really could just be more of a case that we don't see either team really move the ball that much. More of a offensive ineptitude than a defensive juggernauts on either side of the ball, I think. But that leads us to a prop that I really like, right? You just got done talking about how bad Tennessee's passing game is. That's okay, because I think Derrick Henry can get over 11.5 receiving yards. Wouldn't surprise me to see them do that on one play.
Fair enough. I am going back to this one last time for the Broncos. I'm taking Cortland Sutton over 52.5. Tennessee secondary is not good right now. That is the easiest way that you can, advance on this defense. We saw that with the Chiefs, and not that Russell Wilson is playing nearly as well as Patrick Mahomes right now, but that defense is leaky. They leave a lot of holes. The Broncos had an extra week to prepare for this game, so I'm hoping Hackett and Russ went into the lab and found a way to be productive and to get their star receiver involved in this game.
Yeah, you would think that would be the solution there. You get a week off, you get 2 weeks to prepare for a team, you come out, you just look solid, great, all of that. I don't know that I can trust the hometown Broncos to get that done.
God, no, I don't trust it, but that's what should have been happening. And
correct.
If not, I'm going to pound the table that Broncos need to call me like the Colts called Jeff Saturday and have me trot out there and head coach that team. Well, I'm a leader of men. I can motivate these guys.
Well, you know what they say that Jeff Saturday managed to coach a high school team to 500 during his 2 seasons as head coach. We'll see what that translates into the pros. Anyway, I got more to talk about.
Have been playing like a high school team.
Well, the offensive concepts certainly seem that as advanced as what you see on Friday nights. But anyway,
Can you tell we're bitter?
not at all. Not at all. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head straight into the next matchup. And again, guys, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, throw them in the chat. Let's talk about them. Let's have some fun here on Friday. It is the Friday nights fantasy football lights. And Jaguars, Kansas City, Chiefs favored by 9.5, over under on this one, 50.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking KC. I think they can get this game by 10, but I am taking the under. Jags offense has not looked very good. They kind of squeaked one out there against the Raiders. I don't think Kansas City's going to leave that one open here. So I think they get a reality check in Arrowhead. That fan base is extremely loyal and extremely loud. So I think that it's going to cause a little bit of problems for Trevor Lawrence and company. Mahomes will do Mahomes type things, right? 300 plus yards. He'll probably have 3 or 4 passing touchdowns. Like, that wouldn't surprise me one bit. And I think they find a way to cover the 9.5, but I'm taking the under. 50 is a little steep. I don't think the Chiefs defense is going to give up enough to hit the over there.
Right. Yeah, I've got the Jags actually covering this one. This one feels like a touchdown game to me.
Juicy.
I just don't see it getting to the Chiefs covering by double digits on this one. So at that point, I'm going to take the Jags. I do think that they managed to keep this thing to like a 7-point loss. I do think you're right, though, on the under. Again, right, I just don't see these, either team putting up 28 by themselves to kind of touch this one. And this one has the feel of kind of a 28 to 21 type of matchup. So it's going to be the under, just kind of on the barely side. Prop I really like on this one is Travis Etienne over 78.5 rushing yards. He has been on a tear lately, and I look for that to continue in this game.
I like that. That's been one of the Chiefs' downfalls, is stopping the rush. I am taking the Evan Ingram over 37.5 receiving, though, because I think the Chiefs are going to jump out on them, and Lawrence and company are going to have to be playing a bit of catch-up.
I like it. And next matchup here, we've got the Browns and the Dolphins. Dolphins favored by 3.5, over under 49 on this one.
Miami and the over. I think this is probably going to be our highest scoring game of the week right here. So I like Miami to cover. I don't think Cleveland can keep up, but I think we're going to see some garbage points here at the end, maybe making it within a touchdown. But Miami will prevail, and lots of points in this game.
Yeah, I do like the over on this one. I do think that you're going to get lots of points there. And I just took Tua to, outthrow Patrick Mahomes in yardage on that, monkey knife fight game. So we're going to go with the over. We're going to call for Miami to walk away with this one. A prop that I really, really liked on this one was Nick Chubb over 77.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I think that's a little low. I mean, I like that 77.5. That was a little low. I'm taking Tyreek over 93.5. Tyreek and Tua have been on a tear together, and I don't think that there's anybody on this Browns roster that can truly slow Tyreek down.
Yes, agreed. Let's go ahead and Texans, Giants favored by 4.5, over under 40.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Giants to cover here. And I'm also taking the over. I think there's going to be some points in this game. The Giants defense isn't as good as their record would indicate that they are. But that being said, their offense has been finding ways to move the ball. Daniel Jones using his legs, Daniel Jones dumping it off to Saquon, Daniel Jones, finding just the right receiver at the right time. So it's been just enough where outside of Saquon, they're all kind of just guys. But it's been working for them. Brian Dable's been doing a good job with this offense, and I think that the Giants win this, but we're going to get over 40 points total.
Yeah, I think so. This one has the feel that both of these teams could easily get into the 20s as far as points per team on this one. So I think that the over is definitely playable there as well. The Giants have just been finding a way to cover games and win games. And I think that this is another one of those, right? The Texans are, have found a way to cover a lot of spreads, but the Giants have done it better and more so this season. So I'm still going to stick with the Giants on this one. It feels very much like a touchdown kind of game that separates these guys. A 28-21 type of matchup wouldn't surprise me on that one at all. As far as a prop I really like on this one was Saquon over 21.5 receiving yards.
I like Wan'Dale Robinson over 37.5. So again, disappointed 2 weeks ago. They had the bye week to prepare. I think he can get to 40.
Fair enough. I could see that one, certainly. We've got the Saints and the Steelers. Saints are favored by 1.5. The over-under is 40 on this one. What are your thoughts here?
I'm going to take Pittsburgh in this game. I think they're at home. Again, another team coming off a bye week, right? Like, you guys see the theme here. They had time to prepare. Kenny Pickett, Kenny Pickett is continuing to develop, right? He's finding his rapport. We're going to find out what this team looks like without Chase Claypool. But overall, I like Pittsburgh here. I like the over. And TJ Watt's coming back, for those of you who didn't know, right? So a little bit more pressure on Andy Dalton and company. So I think that helps Pittsburgh's defense, allows them to stay in games. You might see a little bit more Najee this game because they're able to stay in these games and they're not just throwing the ball in the second half to play catch up. So fingers crossed. I need Najee to have a week because, my God, Joe Mixon's on a bye. So I need Najee to have a big week here. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh. I'm going to take the over.
I like it. That's why, you just mentioned something right there. TJ Watt being back. That's part of the reason I'm looking to take the Pittsburgh Steelers to cover, if not even win this thing outright. Wouldn't surprise me to see Pittsburgh find a way to pull that one out. They're a completely different team once TJ Watt's on the field. And I do think that you're going to see enough points to see the over. Like, this one's not going to surprise me to see that at all. So I'm taking Pittsburgh. I'm taking the over. And another reason that I'm taking this prop is because TJ Watt's back, and I'm expecting Pittsburgh to get more pressure on the Saints passing game. Alvin Kamara over 33.5 receiving yards. I think you'd probably get that anyway, but I am thinking that you may see Andy Dalton have to check the ball down a little bit more with some of that pass rush coming through.
Yeah, and I have George Pickens over 44.5 receiving yards. I think he's able to get that bit of a bump with Claypool being gone. The rapport with Kenny Pickett has been pretty good so far, so I think we see him get over 44.5 here in this game.
I like it. Bob Dole is in the chat. Good to see you again, Bob Dole. He says, hey, glad to see y'all. And you got a question for us. Fantasy question, Murray or Geno Smith?
I'm going Geno this week. Kyler Murray, they've come out and said it's a game time decision. So I don't like the uncertainty there. Obviously, playing in Germany, you have to make a decision quickly. So for this week, some points is better than the possibility of no points. So I'm going to go with Geno Smith.
Cosign, right? Like, and it'd be different if they both were playing around the same time, that kind of stuff. But the fact is that game in Germany is going to kick off in the wee hours of the morning, especially for those of us in Mountain and Pacific time. That is that's a deal that you're probably, if you're in one of those two time zones, you got to set the lineup the night before to make sure that you're ready to go on that one. And Kyler Murray, you're not going to know that one till late in the afternoon. Yeah, I'm going to go with Geno there as well, for under a lot of the same logic that, Geno better, some points better than no points. And when you realistically are looking at these things, these guys here, if both healthy, both of them starting, are kind of back to back in my rankings, to the point where I've got it like there's going to be about a point or so separating these two, I think, overall on the week if both of them are healthy in play. So I'm going to take, I'm just going to easily pick the guy that's already healthy going into the matchup.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking at 17 to 21 points on either side for both guys.
Right.
So I don't know that there's enough of a spread that's worth holding on until the game time decision for Kyler. So play Geno, know that you have a starting quarterback that will get you points, and Yeah, you might need to hope for a little bit of extra help on the rest of your roster, but all things considered, better than a goose egg because the chances of surviving that are not very good.
Correct. Alrighty. We got the afternoon monkey knife fight here. And again, some rapid fire we're going to play. And for everybody out there, you can play along with us over on monkeyknifefight.com. If you use the promo code GOBFF for a first-time deposit, you'll get up to a $100 deposit match at 100%. Man, I said that weird. 100% deposit match up to $100. There we go. That's how that should have read. And so we've got passing yards. Kyler, Derek Carr. Kyler getting a half-yard bonus. Who are you taking here?
I'm taking Derek Carr. I'm taking the healthy guy.
Cosign. And rushing yards, you've got Josh Jacobs and James Conner. James Conner is getting a 46.5-yard bonus.
Because of that, I'm taking Conner. I think Conner can get you 50 to 60 yards on the ground, and I don't think Jacobs is going to reach his prop here. We will talk about that in the next game we're going to cover.
Yeah. When you're having to spot somebody almost 50 yards, anyway, I'll take the guy that's getting all the extra yardage off the get-go before the game even kicks off. So, cosign, I'll go right along with you. And so we've got both Derek Carr and James Conner. I literally just blanked on that one. Rolling on that one. So, alrighty. And if you guys have any questions, comments, throw them in the chat. Let's make sure we're talking about these things, getting you guys all set. And while we're waiting for some more of those comments and questions to come in, we're going to go ahead and head to our next matchup. We've got the Colts and the Raiders. Raiders favored by 4.5. Over under on this one, 41.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking Indy here. I don't know if it's Jeff Saturday's tutelage in 1 week that's going to drive this home, but I'm taking Indy to keep it within a field goal. I think 4.5 is a pretty big spread for the Raiders. And, anytime that Josh McDaniels can screw up like they have been, it makes me happy. So now I'm going to call it. So Indy under. I don't expect a whole lot of points in this game, but they're able to keep it inside 4.5.
Yeah. This is the game that I hope we don't get in the afternoon slate. On the TV here, but
we know we'll get the Cowboys. So we know we're getting the Cowboys Packers on Fox. So
fair enough.
That will be the game you and I are watching most likely.
Yes.
And hopefully CBS just doesn't show one.
Yes. So, anyway, lots of fun to poke at that Indianapolis organization right now. But I do think you're right. I do think that I really think that you're probably going to see the Raiders get up by about 17 and then find a way to let Indianapolis get back in this thing. The Raiders may win this thing, but I think you're right. I think it's going to be a field goal type of game. So I'll take Indy to cover on that one. Plus, you always tend to see that where they fire a coach and all of a sudden, the team is amped up, ready to go. Maybe it's the fact that they realize that they've got to, play hard, or they might be next kind of thing. Or it could be that, different voices in the building, whatever the case is. But I do think the under, this one here is going to be a painful game to watch, I do believe. But a prop that I liked on this one, Mo Alley Cox over 10.5 receiving yards. And quite frankly, we need Mo Alley Cox to have a decent game in the Scott Fish Bowl this week. So let's go, Mo Alley Cox.
There you go. I'm taking Josh Jacobs under 82.5. The Colts defense has not been giving up a ton of yardage on the ground. Shaq Leonard's missing another game, but he's missed most of the season, so they know how to play without him at this point. But Jacobs the last couple weeks has disappeared again for whatever reason, so I'm going to say that trend continues under 82.5.
Yeah, that is going to be something else. And anyway.
Yeah, this is an ugly game. This might be uglier than any Broncos game we've seen this season.
Yeah, that one's going to be bad. So Tober, I do see your question there, and we're going to talk about the Cowboys anyway on this next matchup. So we're going to hit that deal, give our breakdowns of this game, the props, all of that, and then we're going to hit your question. Alrighty, we got the Cowboys and the Packers. Cowboys are favored by 4.5. The over-under is 43. What are your thoughts on this game?
Cowboys by a touchdown and the over. And I think Green Bay will probably get a touchdown late to help get to the over, but I expect the Cowboys to be, touch 28 or even 30 points in this game. It's just a matter of if Green Bay can contribute a touchdown or two to really help get there. But I'm taking the over. I'm taking the Cowboys to cover the 4.5. I think this game should be closer to like a 6.5 or 7.5 game. I think that'd be a little bit more difficult to look at. But that's right. We're going Big D here.
Yeah, I'm going to be right there with you. We're going to take some Big D as well. I'm going to also take the over. I do think you're right. I think that you're going to see the Cowboys easily put up probably 24 to 28 points by themselves. And it's not going to surprise me to see the Packers find a way to put up, 15 to 20 points on their end as well. So one of the props that I really liked was Zeke finding a way to get over 46.5 rushing yards. He's managed even in this timeshare thing to kind of just be consistently right at about 50 yards on the ground all season long when he's played. And I'm going to ride that trend and call for Zeke to be over 46.5 rushing yards.
Fair enough. I'm going Dalton Schultz over 33.5 receiving yards. When he's been healthy, Dak Prescott has looked his way and kept him very involved in this passing game. I think that trend continues. So Schultz over 33.5.
I like it. Let's go ahead and head into Sotober's question. He asks, is Schultz a start rest of season?
I think depending on if I remember your roster correctly, yes, right? Like, I think maybe you run into some things like when Njoku is back and fully healthy. I think there's probably some matchup dependencies for Schultz or Njoku. But I think for the most part, yes, we've seen his ability to be heavily involved in this Cowboys offense when healthy. He seems to be in a much better place after being injured the first part of the season here. So I like Schultz as a pretty strong tight end play the rest of the season.
He has a juicy schedule in this back half. So Green Bay is kind of a ho-hum matchup for him. But then you get Minnesota, the Giants, Indianapolis, Houston, Jacksonville are the next slate of games there. Philly's going to be a tough one in week 16, but then it gets Tennessee, who's been pretty weak against tight ends there as well. So you have a lot of really just kind of plus matchups heading down the pike here for Dalton Schultz. So yeah, I absolutely would be starting him. It does depend a little bit on some of your other roster construct there and who else that you have that you could play over him. But even when you look at it, if you were just streaming a tight end, you're going to have a harder time finding a better set of matchups, out of the back half and the very end of your fantasy roster and season here. So absolutely, he is a start, and there's no reason that you shouldn't see him easily, finish as a top 10 tight end when it's all said and done. Alrighty. Next matchup, we got the Cardinals, we got the Rams. Rams favored by 1.5, over under on this one, 40.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm going to take the Rams, and I'm going to take the over in a surprising turn of events here. So Arizona's defense hasn't been great. The Rams defense at times has been great, and at other times has not looked so wonderful, a la the back end of the game against Tampa Bay last week. But I'm going to take the Rams to cover the 1.5. If Kyler plays, I do think that probably changes my tone a little bit. We don't expect Stafford to play. So Kyler equals Arizona. Matt Stafford or no Kyler, I guess, should, in my mind, equals Arizona. But I think either way, I'm taking the over in a surprising turn of events here.
Yeah, this is one that I've gone back and forth on several times throughout the day on which way I was looking, which way I was leaning, and I'm going to take Arizona. I think that they find a way to cover this thing, if not even win outright. The Rams, like I said, I don't think that we're going to see Stafford in this one, and that being the case, I think both teams are going to struggle to put up points a little bit. So I'm going to take the under on this one. And if Stafford misses, I don't know how the Rams are going to really, move the ball down the field, keep things going there. And so I'm going to take the under and Arizona. This one was another one of those that there were 0 props out there when we were looking at that one. So no props on that one there. Any other thoughts on this matchup?
No. And even if there were props, I'd be staying away from it. I'm not going anywhere near this game.
Right. Agreed. All righty, let's go ahead and talk a little trophy smack. So here at the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast, we are all about them cash and them trophies. And now you can get a completely customized trophy, ring, belt, all of that good stuff over at trophysmack.com. You can find the link to it down in the description, both on YouTube and the audio podcast as well. And yeah, check it out. You get a fully customized trophy, ring, belt over there at trophysmack.com. And when you make an order through that link, it helps the boys out as well. All righty. Next matchup here. We're heading into the Sunday night games here. San Francisco, the Chargers, they're going to meet up. So Chargers, 49ers. Niners are favored by 7. The over-under on this one, 45.5. What are your thoughts on this game?
I'm taking San Francisco. Defense has been getting healthier. Offense have been playing pretty stinking well, especially since Christian McCaffrey came into town. We've seen the Chargers kind of Jekyll and Hyde us this season, right? There's been certain games where the offense shows up and they're back and forth and it's a crazy game, kind of like the Cleveland game. And then there's other games where they just don't show up and you're puttering around wondering what's going on, kind of like the Bronco game with the Chargers, right? So I'm taking San Francisco to cover this. I don't think the Chargers play very well on the road. This game is in Levi Stadium. Not that it's worlds apart, but it is far enough apart that it's a true road game. You're not going to see any really Charger fanfare there. It's all going to be a sea of red for San Francisco. I think that helps make the difference here. So I'm going San Francisco, but I am going the under. I don't think we're going to see 45 points in this game.
No, this one has a feeling to me of a 24-21 type of matchup. Like, I think we're going to get really, really close to that over under, but I do think that we're going to stay under. And like I said, I do think that this is going to be closer to a field goal kind of game than a touchdown type of game. And that being the case, I'm going to take the Chargers to cover on this one. So Chargers cover. And one of the props that I really liked was Justin Herbert. The line was set at 252.5 passing yards. I think that he can smash that one this week, and we'll see him go over that total.
Oh, fair enough. I have Jimmy G on the other side, but I'm going under 240.5 passing yards. I think McCaffrey and this running game is going to continue to take over here, and he's not going to need 240 yards.
Yeah, I could definitely see that one. Monday. We've got the Commanders and the Eagles playing. Eagles favored by 11. The over-under on this one, 44. What are your thoughts here?
I'm going Washington to keep this inside of 11. I think the Eagles on the money line, absolutely. But I think this is somewhere between a 7 and 10 point game. Like, I don't see this getting out to 11. The Eagles defense in the second half has had kind of a tendency to let teams back in it as they get these dominant leads in the first half. The 1 week being the exception was last Thursday night against the Texans, right, where the defense had to step up in the second half because they were not playing very well to start that game. All that said, it's going to be a good game for Philadelphia fantasy players. I just think Washington finds a way to keep this inside of 11 points.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I do think that we're going to see 11 points is just, you're talking a 2 touchdown spread realistically when we're talking 11, right? Like that's how the math tends to work.
You don't get to 12, right? Like 12, right. Maybe 13. 13's probable, but 11 and 12 point games, you don't see a whole lot of 21-10.
No, and most games this year have been have come down to a 1 possession type of game. This being a divisional matchup, I think that you're going to see both teams play extremely, play each other extremely well, extremely close. And I'm kind of right there with you. This feels far more like a touchdown to 10 point type of game there. I don't see it getting into the 12 or more. So I'm going to call for Washington. I do like the over. I do think that both of these teams find a way to put up enough points. It's not going to surprise me to see Philly put up, something around 28 points, and you see the Commanders, end up right around 20, 18 to 21 type of thing. So I think you can absolutely see the over come into play. One of the props I really liked, Dallas Goedert over 47.5 receiving yards.
I like that one. The one that I chose for this game was Devonta Smith, anytime touchdown. He's due. Time to start balancing the books here.
I like it. I like it a lot. Well, guys, that is all of our matchups there. If you have any final questions, anything like that, let's go ahead and get those thrown out there. Let's get you some answers. We're going to start signing off here. So, Kevin, any final thoughts out there for the viewers and the listeners?
Stay tuned, right? Make sure you're paying attention to your injury reports. Keenan Allen's a no-go. We expect Matt Stafford to be a no-go. We expect Josh Allen to be a no-go. Kyler, I do kind of think he's going to end up playing, so maybe I should just change my prediction on that game to Arizona right away, because I do think Kyler's going to end up playing. But all that said, there's going to be some interesting matchups, at least name wise, right? So I think that Minnesota and Buffalo game will be interesting. I think the Seattle Tampa Bay game is going to be interesting, like waking up for it. Like, it's just going to be one of those things. Not the highest scoring slate we've had in recent weeks, but we can expect some points here. Miami, Cleveland, lots of points. Start all your fantasy guys in that game, right? So good week, but we're humming along here, trying to chop our way through the last few weeks of all these buys before we get into the playoffs. But it's the home stretch, so time to make kind of your final moves and be thinking 3-4 weeks ahead, so that way you can have your roster in prime shape for your playoff push.
I like it. I like it a lot. And again, guys, right? Like there's a point to that where you got to make sure that your playoff roster spots are set, ready to go. But you also just, these are some of the weeks that you may have to manufacture a win. It's okay to win ugly in fantasy football. The points still all score the same. So do what you can. Make sure that you're walking away each week with a W on that and making your march towards the playoffs there as well. But that's going to do it for us. You can find us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Old Boys FF. If you have any questions, start sits, whatever. In the meantime, before we go live again, send it our way over there. We answer those just as quickly as we can. And again, best way to support this independent podcast, head over to youtube.com/@GoodOldBoysFF and hit that subscribe button over there. Smash the like button on this video you're watching. Leave us a comment, all that good stuff. But that's going to do it for us tonight. This was the Friday Night Fantasy Football Lights. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe.